Let's get back.
Southside Greenville, North Carolina.
Hello, this is Awesome Radio. Thank you so much for joining us today and every day, all day, 24 hours a day. We are live on your radio dial at 106.9. Catch us online on our social media platforms. And also, you can listen from our website, WBIS awesomeradio.org. Catch us on GPAT TV, Roku, and all of those other places as well. If you have an Alexa skill, just say, Alexa, play Awesome Radio, Winterville, NC. We're also on Android and Apple devices. This is the show Human Sex Trafficking and More with host Ronleen Kennedy. I'm going to step away and Ronleen is going to take it from here.
Good morning. Thank you so much for a beautiful introduction. This is your hostess, Ronleen Kennedy, and I will be presenting for the month of May. We're finishing it out. Next week will be the last week, and next week will be that time when you can ask your questions. And it's human sex trafficking and more. We're going to talk about the dangers of human sex trafficking and how does it affect everyone and let you know that no one is exempt. Now, our introductions are as follows today. We have Ms. Raven Steigall. She's our resident occult subject matter expert. We have Sorella Perry. She's at the bottom left. And she is with she's the founder of One Vision, One Purpose. We have Kimberly Butts, and she is a private investigator, former police officer. And above, in with the green on, we have our visionary here, to bring this to us today. And her name is Alexandria Dean. She is the author of From Heaven to Hell and Back a Few Times. And she also is a motivational speaker. And she is out to the various organizations to teach everyone about human sex trafficking and the things that you can do about that. So now, without any further ado, we are going to tell you today what you're going to be learning about. You're going to be learning about identity. Who are you? Trafficking within the cult, the occult, the types of trafficking, and being a shining light into the darkness, and the importance of knowing who your police, your sheriffs, and all of your city leaders are. So these are the things that we're going to be talking about today, and this gets administered out to the universities, the colleges, the families, organizations, churches, pharmacies, hospitals, and even your workplace. So please get in touch with Alexandria Dean. She is the administrator of this, and she can help you bring things forward. Now, without any further ado here, we're going to have just a few short words from Alexandria Dean, and then we're going to turn it over to Raven because she is going to give us a testimonial about the walk and the journey that she has been doing with Alexandria. So we'll go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alexandria Dean. Just as Ms. Ronleen said, I have walked through being trafficked by my mother, abused by my father, and have done a lot of work in the healing process. And when something so devastating happens, it's very difficult to come through it, but you can. And that's what we are talking about today. Coming through the different challenges and how you, who haven't been through such things, can walk with somebody in that manner.
Yeah, so my name is Raven, and Alexandria and I have known each other for several years now. And what was really cool was I do not have any type of trauma background, but I got to walk with Alexandria during some of her healing process. And those two halves really can work together. And in my experience, and Alexandria, I'd like you to chime in just a little bit. What I kind of did to help along that process was, in a very kind of non-emotional way, acknowledge the horrible things that took place, but then at the same time, because I really understand what it means to be created in the image of God, as a believer, as someone who believes in scripture, God paints a beautiful picture of what it means to be created by him, to be adopted by him. And so at combining acknowledging the horrible things, but then really reinforcing and declaring the true identity of who you are as created by God, was how I got to walk with Alexandria.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And is there anything you want to say about that, Alexandria?
It was during some of the most difficult times of a specific type of therapy where I had to face something very, very difficult. And it was extremely helpful to be able to go to my friend and speak with her, where I knew that um, she wasn't going to have to carry anything, that she would be impartial to it, and very loving, and it was extremely helpful, extremely helpful. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I remember something my father said to me one day. He said what he enjoyed about having me around is that um, he did not, it wasn't so much of what I said or didn't do. It was a matter of my countenance of being there. He was
Mm.
like, it's the little things, the silence sometimes is the better thing. So, do you agree with that?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Yes, because there were times when she would just sit with me, and there weren't words, um, and the she would just acknowledge there aren't words. um,
Because
yeah,
I know that, especially like when you're wanting to help somebody, you think you need to be doing something. Like, I need to be saying something or doing something. But especially when you're dealing with something that horrific, just in my mind, I'm like, no matter what words I put to this, it's going to either come across shallow or pithy or just insincere. And so I would just say there are no words that can adequately describe how awful this is, and
yeah,
I wish I had them.
yeah,
And I think just being kind of that frank uh, uh, showed
yes,
genuineness.
absolutely. And for most of us that have been through trafficking, uh, you can see fake very clearly, um, and because you've had to live it, uh, whether you wanted to or not. So, having someone express what's right in front of them really plainly is powerful, absolutely powerful, because then you're not alone.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, this is really horrible. Yeah,
Well, and I think that's also kind of what makes the dichotomy of being a believer really miraculous, is that because I am rooted in my identity as a daughter of God, a daughter adopted by Jesus, I can look at something hideous and awful in the face, and I don't have to candy coat it. I
right.
don't have to sugarcoat it. I don't have to live in denial and pretend it wasn't that bad. Is no, this is how ugly it was. This is how horrible it was. But God is even more capable. And
Yeah.
that's where like the healing and the power comes from, is really acknowledging the ugliness as awful, but
Yes.
then also acknowledging how much more powerful Jesus is than that
E-
ugliness.
Exactly. Exactly. To give just a little bit of understanding of where I was. I want to warn everybody at this moment that what I'm about to share may be very triggering for some. I find it very necessary to express this because it's not a topic that typically is discussed. Um, what I was going through at the time was facing the worst memory ever. My worst memory ever was up until 11 years old. I had been made to sleep with every family member except for my mother. So what I was dealing with was when my mother started trafficking me. Uh, about 6 months in, she started taking payments for participating. And so she was participating in the different acts and stuff and taking payment for it. And so there is nothing worse, I don't think. I've experienced an extraordinary amount of torture. And there is nothing worse than having your mother participate willingly. And that was what I was dealing with at the time. So, and it was the first instance because there were multiple after. But in that, at the end of the whole episode of what had happened, because there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. When we came to the end, in my explaining of this, because then I'd have to listen to the most detailed telling every day. And I was walking through this. I had such an emptiness, and that word doesn't even begin to compare to what I was experiencing. There was like a black hole, and that doesn't even really explain it. In my identity, in my being, and when I had to get up and go get cleaned up and continue on because there were others. It was in that moment when I reached the door to open it, to go back and have to, do more work. And when I say work, I was being trafficked to other people as well after the event. And I can remember feeling so devoid of anything. When I reached the door, I cried out to the Lord, please help me. And he did. But it wasn't until I worked through the whole of being empty and devoid of anything that I could see that he answered my prayers. I saw that there was proof of it, but I didn't know it because you can see something, but it doesn't register. But when I faced this, that I didn't want to face, that I wanted to continue to run from, I was able to see that the Lord truly never left me. And he continued to give me what I needed, not more, not less than, but exactly what I needed to get through it. And this was what Raven and many of our mishpacha helped walk through this with me. And that's what we are explaining, the coming from that total emptiness and discovering who I am. And you can too. So some of the things that I had to really understand is that I wasn't created just to be used. And as Christians, we tend to think, oh, okay, I've got to get the shirt off my back. I have to do this. I have to do that in order to be, a good Christian. But the truth is that there are appropriate boundaries that we have and that we are to maintain. Because if we continue to give out of ourselves and out of nothing, then are we giving? And isn't it his giving in and through us that really matters? But I cannot pour from an empty vessel. And so that is the biggest lesson that I had to learn, is that I am of extraordinary value, and that the Lord established that. And Jesus solidified that establishment, because he didn't hang on the cross and say, "Oh, I'm dying for you, Raven, but nope, not I don't have you, Kimberly. You're not on the list. Oh, Cirilla, you no, but Roundling, yep, we got you." And no, he didn't. He did not. He said, "I am dying for you, Kimberly. I am dying for you, Cirilla. I am dying for you, Raven. I am dying for you, Ronline, so that you all can have a relationship, a personal relationship with the Lord." And when I grasped that, there were all kinds of things that attempted to come at that. Um, but that's for me to learn to stand, because we fall down and we get back up. But it's in the getting back up that makes the fall less likely, because we're strengthening ourselves in the Lord and in what we now possess. And that is what I was learning. Um, and it was a valuable lesson.
Yes. So at this time, I'm going to switch gears here. Would you talk about your experience in being the light, the shining light in the darkness?
Yes. Um, it really didn't make a whole lot of sense until I saw the light in the midst of my darkness. And that didn't happen really where I was conscious of it until I faced it in, I was doing prolonged exposure therapy, which is extremely grueling, but extremely necessary, because I wouldn't have really seen the Lord's protection, Jesus in the midst of it all, being that example of, I love you. You live today because I protected you. Protection isn't always just saving you from a bad thing that happens. Protection is also showing you that that bad thing can happen, but it does not have to crack and break and destroy you.
Mm.
It's a matter of the choice that you have in the midst of it. Am I going to trust the one that said that he would keep me and protect me? Absolutely. So it's that wells up within us, that gives us the ability to be obedient. When in Joshua 1:9, where it says, "Have I not commanded you to be strong and of a good courage?" Because that is what we have to have in order to call evil evil. That is the true essence of shining your light in the darkness, is when you see something that is evil, that you call it, that is evil. When somebody is lying, you are lying. You're speaking truth. And they say, "Oh, well, that's mean." You know what? The truth does hurt, but the real truth behind that is love rejoices in truth. It is, I love you enough to have the courage to stand and say, "You're wrong. That is a lie. You are being evil." That's love. And that is what Christianity needs. That is what my brothers and sisters who have been trafficked needs, because they really know that truth in spades. And it's about the courage to walk through, and know that the Lord has you through it all. We live We are alive to share that testimony. And that is the very breath of the Lord's love within us, to be able to say, hey, I experienced some of the most heinous things man can do. And I live to tell about it because he never left me and he never forsook me.
Blessings, blessings, blessings. Thank you for bringing that out. Now, I wanted you to talk about identity.
Yes. Yes. Because coming from total devastation and my identity completely obliterated, because in the midst of walking this healing, you know, daughters take a lot of their identity from their mothers. And if my mother is like this, who am I? Um, you know, like mother, like daughter, like father, like son. You know, both my parents were mentally ill, and both of them walked and did some very evil things. So who am I? Well, you know, the Lord called me from the womb of my mother in the midst of her sin. I was called forth because we cannot choose who our father and mother are going to be. Our biological parent is specifically designed by the Lord. And when I began to wrap my head around, oh my goodness. So the Lord called me forth from the midst of this stuff. Who am I really? Do I take my identity from that? But that doesn't seem to sit right with me. That doesn't agree with the truth of what I know. So my identity is in the Lord, not what I experienced. What I experienced amplifies the fact that I am of him, because he said, I am yours and you are mine. So when I began to understand that, I could see that I am beautifully and wonderfully made, as it says in Psalms 139:14, that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You know, when I think of, you know, a very famous Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. So I had to lay down what I think to go deep dive into the word, which is Jesus. John chapter 1 says this, and stand in the word, and trust that the Lord, whom I've given my whole life to, is going to meet me there. And I had a great difficulty in trusting um, the Lord, because I could see where he was trustworthy with everyone else. I could see in the word where he held true to his word, but I couldn't see it in my own life. Whether it was present or not, I couldn't see it. So it made it hard for me to trust him. So I told them, I I love you, but I don't trust you. I don't know how to get there. I need your help to show me. Show me where you are trustworthy in my life, where it's personal in my life. And he did. He did through that whole process. He began, you know, I could see, yeah, you were there. You did answer my cry when I cried out to you. You are trustworthy. So I literally put a timer on that's why you all hear at 9 a.m. my time, my alarm goes off because it reminds me to stop and say, thank you, Lord. I trust you. Because in the Old Testament, in the Torah, when the law came down from off of Zion, the command was at the beginning of the day at 9 a.m. and at 3 p.m., there was sacrifice that was made to the Lord, not for sin, but as a covenant promise every day, twice a day. We trust you. We believe that you will keep your covenant until Jesus came, and then it stopped.
Let me ask you real quick, Alexandria, because you've given a lot of information. So, if someone in our audience has that has an identity crisis from what they've been through, where would you suggest that they kind of start in order to start that healing process, that
In the word,
re-identity? Hmm?
um, Psalms. I know a lot of people point to John, and I don't disagree with that. But in the Psalms, David had the strongest sense of who he was in the Lord. And there are a lot of prophets that had that as well. But with David, we have in the Psalms the very essence of his ups and his downs, and in his worst moment when his wives and his children were taken, and all of his men's wives and children were taken, and everybody was in the biggest low ever. David encouraged himself in the Lord. Why and how did he do that? He did that because he knew who the Lord was. And in Psalms, he lays it out. Because one of the biggest verses that I quoted was Psalm 139, verse 14. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That is the second half of the verse. But Psalms definitely rings true to sharing who we are in the Lord. In our darkest moments, we can cry to the Lord, and He does hear our cry, and He will attend to our requests. And I think that is one of the biggest places that you could spend some time and really see the character of the Lord, and where He is in the joyous moments and in the darkest moments.
Mm. Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Alexandria and Raven, for bringing that to light because that is so on point. And do Sorella and Kimberly, would you like to weigh on that for a few seconds? I can't hear. I can't hear you. Okay. All right. So, Kim.
Okay. Yeah. Uh, so I think it's important to finding a little bit of hope in the situation.
Mm.
If young people, it is hard to find a little bit of hope. Um, Getting around other people, other school friends, finding that hope that this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not where God intended me to be. You know, just a little bit. Faith is as small as a mustard seed. So all it takes is just a little bit. If a child has a little bit in a dark situation, it can multiply thousands. And I truly believe that that's what brought Lex out of her
Mm,
situation was it took just a little bit. Um, as law enforcement, we have to just look for the opening, meeting kids where they are. If they only want to give you a little bit of information, take a little bit of information, step by step, but do something.
Thank you so
amen.
beautifully. Do you agree with that, Alexandria?
Yes, I do. I do. I think that it is uh, it is important um, to have faith, because I couldn't see hope, but I had faith, which is where you feel like you have nothing, but faith and hope are very similar, right? And I think that it is sometimes that's all you can cling to is that. And Thank you.
And just real quick, because I'm thinking of, again, like I'm thinking if there's someone in our audience that's in that place, just like where do you start? Like, how do you do that? And you've told me, Alexandria, just like because, again, like I don't have a trauma background.
Mhm.
A lot of times when we would be together, just knowing that this isn't the end all be all. Like this, I wasn't doomed and fated to have something horrible, and getting to look at my life and my background and it's like, oh, that's possible. That's on the table. A non-trauma background is possible. Did
Okay.
that give you hope?
Let me interrupt there because we
Please.
go to the break.
Yeah.
But yes, she can answer that when we come back. You have been listening to Awesome Radio 106.9 FM, and you are listening to your hostess today, Ronleen Kennedy, with the featured broadcast for the month of May only. Awesome Radio is presenting to you From Heaven to Hell and Back Again a few times as the author of Alexandria Dean. And our subject matter is dealing with human sex trafficking and more. And now we're going to have you to call in today for your book, the book giveaway at 252 756 2008. Again, 252 756 2008. Call in to claim your book today. And we're going to return back over to Raven. Raven was asking a question to dealing with our identity and when it's been robbed from us, from especially from the people that we love the most. Go ahead, Raven.
Mhm.
Yeah, so my question for Alex is spending time around kind of like what Kimberly was saying, spending time around other individuals that maybe don't have a trauma background. Does that help with finding hope?
Sometimes it really depended on the healing process, where I was in the healing. Sometimes it was uh, a big, huge sore that got pricked. There was, uh, you know, sometimes it would be difficult to see happy, loving families, uh, because I felt, I missed out, or that, I didn't get what I needed. So where were you, Lord? And why didn't I get what I needed? Um, and, what I did eventually discover is that I did get what I needed, not at the time that I thought I should have it, and that I am to trust his timing. Because, yes, particularly when I was going through learning my identity, it was extraordinarily helpful to be around you and others that were that had um, you know regular families, without the trauma, dysfunctional some, but still regular families. It was extremely helpful.
Thank you so much for that. Did I answer your question, Raven?
It helped. What I'm wondering is, again, kind of for our audience, how is there something practical or tangible, Alex, that you would suggest of here's a place to kind of start to help building that hope or finding that light in the middle of the darkness?
Um, the It was a series of things. So I think really getting in the Word of God, getting in the Bible, really is the biggest key. Because what I um, realized was that I could not stand on my feelings. My feelings changed. They changed with the wind. I mean, I would be happy, and then I would be sad, and then I'd be hysterical, and then I'd be, whatever, all within a matter of 5 minutes. So I couldn't rely on that. But I could trust the word. It was something, it was stable ground that I could stand on. I feel, um, you know, disgusting. And I could lean into Psalm 139, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. So I acknowledge that I feel this way, but I stand on the truth. So that is the best
Mm.
place to go. But it requires that you believe that is the word of God, and that does not change, because it hasn't changed. Um, it is something stable. And I can acknowledge the feeling and stand on the truth. The truth is that I am not to necessarily lean into my understanding, but to trust Him, and He will direct my path. And if I truly believe that, then I'm going to do that, and my path will be clear.
Okay. All right, Kimberly, weigh in on that.
Okay. So it's important to remember that there are ages and stages. From 0 to 3, from 5 to 10, and 11 to 12. And then we've got our teenage 15, 14 years old when you're starting to do self identify. But as a young child, if a young child is being sex trafficked or molested by a familiar, and 90% of young people, young children, are sex trafficked by a family member or molested by a family member because it's easier access to get to that child. So we've got to remember that Alexandra's situation started early. So as she changed with age, her stages changed. Her
Mm.
feeling of emotions, her feeling of not being protected. So to answer your question, Raven, is that if a child is between 0 to 10, then them being around other children in their age group, they might can lean on it and see what they have in their family and then say, I don't have that, seeing the difference. Because children are perceptive.
Mm.
And I think that's a gift, being perceptive and have um, discretion in certain situations. Was like, wait a minute, this is not going on at my house. This is what y'all do at your house. Or this is what y'all do at school. Y'all did that last night. Did you eat that? Um, those are one of the things that you have to look out for when you're dealing with younger kids, minors, because minors are not really apt to tell you they have a problem. You have to ask. And I guarantee you, if someone had have just asked Alexandra, are you okay? What's going on today? Can you talk about this? Life would have been different. But when we're talking about other people, when we're talking about little kids, we have to remember that adults have to direct that conversation because children are impressionable. So I would say how to get out of it, or what you can do to help a child is, and you think something is going on, helping that child being aware of her surroundings, making them feel comfortable enough to talk. But you as an adult have to find the right way to ask a certain question without making them feel like I might get in trouble, I might get
Mm.
somebody in trouble. Because remember, in order to have that control, you have to make that child feel like you're the problem, you're responsible, you deserve this. This is happening because it's supposed to happen.
Mm.
Very true.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Mm.
Okay, so with that said, Kimberly, you are right on point there. And I thank you so much for saying that, because
Yes.
you're right. When you're going through those stages, and you get around what is normalcy, and then you become really confused. And then when I read the book of Alexandra, she said she knew something wasn't right from the very beginning. As soon as and but because she didn't know what wasn't right, she didn't know what was right. but she knew whatever was happening to her wasn't right. And Alexandra, was that because of the pain that you were enduring from all of this, or what was your intuition telling you?
Um, that is a good way of putting it. I, it did not feel good. You know, it didn't feel, um, it didn't sit right with me, even as a child, as an infant. Um, you, I didn't like what was happening to me, and I knew that it just deep inside, um, it wasn't right. I didn't know what was right, but I knew what was happening wasn't right. Um, and it wasn't until I could see other people that, you know, they weren't having these kinds of relationships with their parent. And, you know, this was a secret. So is it right if I can't share it? That was one of the bigger things. And I did have you know, and you'll read it in the book, a very precious friend of mine, still to this day. So it's a 40 plus year relationship. My girlfriend, Allison, in the book, she really helped, um, you know, point out, or just gave an ear for me to talk. Um, and then there was also, you know, an imaginary friend that I had that I didn't really, you know, a lot of people get very squirrely when you talk about an imaginary friend. They're like, oh, that's a demon. Oh, that's, you know, that's just not right. And you know, that those things can be very true. But in my particular case, this imaginary friend, who I believe was an angel, um, shared with me how a family was supposed to function, what it looked like for a dad to love his daughter in a healthy way, and a mother with her daughter in a healthy way, and how siblings were supposed to be. And it clearly pointed to my grandmother and my aunt praying for my whole family, and that had a huge impact. And see, the Lord does hear our prayers, and He attends to them diligently, because I know He heard my grandmother's prayers and my aunt's prayers, because there is no way I could know and be as healthy as I am without those experiences in my life, in some of the most darkest times.
That's beautiful. And so, Kimberly, I'm coming back to you because I remember when you and I were preparing for this this walk, this journey that we're in right now, and you were wondering, you were like, why no one knew that this child was coming to school every day and all of the pain that she was experiencing. Why no, you know, why, how did that get by her? That kind of thing. So talk about that, Kimberly, because the way you said it, no one could say it the way you said it in that moment that you said it in, that you
Mhm.
asked those questions.
I absolutely think that there is a responsibility as an adult to find out if you're in school, you're a teacher, you have a position of power, you have a position of authority, you're a second parent. If you're a school campus police officer, it is your responsibility, your job to make sure that those kids that come to school every day are safe, they are healthy, they are not being tormented or tortured, and they get home safe. Just like we, have these bullying campaigns, there's absolutely no way a child should get by and you don't feel or sense something is wrong. I feel like it is the adult's responsibility. There's no, it boggles the mind as to how she was in school, went to school every day, No school counselor, not the teacher, no one addressed her. No one saw a difference because at some point in time, you have to act out. You have to let it go. You're holding it in, you're trying to keep it together, and you become angry as a child. Find out why, because I will never forget the 13-year-old that was raped by the stepfather. Got in such a vicious altercation with another child that ended up having to take the child in the hospital, but it was such a violent nature that even when the counselor called the sheriff over, he was like, wait a minute, this is not normal. And to take
Mm.
the extra steps as that person in authority to find out what is going on as a counselor, as a school counselor, you are the first responders to
Yes.
an actual problem in a home. Not the police. You, your teachers and counselors, you see those children first.
Yes.
So don't just I'm clocking in for my job. Let's get to the work. Let's get our day to day done. You know, find out about your kids. You know them.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we have Sorella here today. She's chiming in. Um, Come on, Sorella. You have 1 minute to just really talk about that from the school aspect.
Talk about what aspect? I'm sorry.
Okay. So the school, the responsibility of the teachers when a child comes into your present, and it can be just on a babysitting level, if you will.
Right.
Uh, Talk about that.
Ab-
What is it that you're looking for when a child comes into your care? 1 minute.
okay. For that, it's like was already stated. Normalcy. Kids, can be labeled as bad or whatever the case may be, depending on the age, but it's a reason. Something is fueling them being uncomfortable, being upset, being angry, but if they're of talking age, you shouldn't have an issue with actually just talking to them in the soft tones to be able to kind of pry a little bit to get more information as to what is possibly going on. Just had a situation on Monday with my daughter who was babysitting for a young lady, two kids, 4 months old, 4 year old. The 4 year old had a black eye. I told her, I said, listen, it is our responsibility to report this. Did we want to see, her to go to jail? No one wants to see someone separated from their children. However, if you're bold enough to send your children somewhere after abuse or whatever, there's a 50-50 chance that you're going to have a good Samaritan to report that. But it was necessary. I myself, even after going through all this, I wouldn't have been able to sleep to just allow her, to send the children back in possibly a worse condition. So, just do your due diligence. Report it, even if it's anonymous. But you are responsible. We all have a responsibility. It is a village situation. We shouldn't get away from that. But it takes all of our eyes and ears to be able to, help the generation that can't quite speak up for themselves or may not know how to articulate.
Thank you so
Well
much,
said.
because that is right on point. And we're going to I want to just welcome all of you and just thank you all for being here. And we are going to prepare for our social media forum. And we just want to say from Awesome Radio, we thank you. And we just want you to have a blessed day. Call in for your book, 252-756-2008. 252-756-2008. And our last week's person to get the book was Corey Jordan. Corey,
Mhm.
we thank you for your listenership, and we hope that you enjoy your book and learn something. So now we're preparing for social media. Tune in. All right. So as we're preparing for social media, as we're preparing for social media, I just want to thank you all for your contributions in this. And let's see if we have our star